Hey gang, welcome to this episode of the Dealer Playbook podcast. So glad you're here. I'm sitting down with my new pal, Brooke Furniss. Sometimes there's a letter C in the middle. Brooke C. Furniss. She's the president and founder of BZ Consultants Group, a digital marketing company who takes pride in speaking. I love how this says this on your LinkedIn, by the way, so that they don't have to understand the techie lingo.
Yes.
This is fantastic. We're going to be talking all about leadership, how it's changed in the last 20 years and where we see it going in the future, especially on the heels of on the toes, dare I say, of a recession. Brooke, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be on not only any podcast, the Dealer Playbook podcast. Like, this is a big, big honor. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it's funny how we went back and forth. I was like, we've experienced a first in my 9.5 years doing the podcast. And we were both interested in having one another on each other's podcast because you've got your podcast. Remind me the title again.
It's called Facts Not Feelings with Brooke Furniss.
I love this. Facts Not Feelings. I actually was going to say it backwards. I was going to say feelings, not facts. But anyways, so I send you the booking link. You book thinking that you're booking me to be on your show. And then after, when we were laughing about it, realizing the confusion, I couldn't help but think, how douchey of me would that be if I was like, yeah, I'll be on your show. Here's my booking link. You book on my calendar.
It was so confusing. So, and I thought, okay, what would he, what's some great topics for him? And I'm thinking through it. And as I'm booking it, I'm thinking, this looks really confusing. It looks like I'm booking on his show. Well, maybe I am. All right. Now I'm on the #1 podcast in automotive. Fantastic. All right. I'll dust my shoulders off here a little bit here.
So awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. We, of course, met, I want to say, for the first time. And if we have met prior to Napa a few weeks ago at Brian Pash's event, then I guess I am a douche. But I'm pretty sure that was the first time we've actually shaken hands, embraced in new friendship. And, I was delighted to see how fun-loving you are. You're a footwear enthusiast. I was trying to find a fancy way of saying it.
A little bit of a sneakerhead, yes. And yes,
how deep,
100%.
How deep does this enthusiasm go?
It's a bit of a problem. There's the 12-step program. I've gotten to step 1 to admit I have a problem, and that's about as far as it goes. Like, there was a little bit of a Nike mishap last week where I hit on one of the Jordan ones, and then the next day there was ended up being like 6 shoes that released, and I go, I'll try to hit on at least one of them. I ended up hitting on 4 or 5 of them. So Jordan just kept getting delivered, and I haven't told my other half yet. So I just kind of have them hidden over in the corner. I think all in total, I think there were 6 Jordans that ended up getting delivered this past week. So yes, all in total, at one point before I moved out to Chicago, I had, I think, 300 pairs of Jordans. And then I've broken and torn a lot of things. I shattered my foot. When it healed, my shoe size changed. And so I started selling them off. So now I have, I'm going to say, like 150 pairs. And I've got like stuff from like the 98 and 99 and 2000s. And I have the newer ones as well. But I have Jordans and, old school Nike Shocks and Adidas and all sorts of stuff. But the Jordans are the ones I really, really love. And it's a massive problem. It 100% is. I'm fully aware of it, fully aware.
My mind immediately goes to the fact that I have a closet full of clothes that are all black t-shirts. And I did that to kind of try and follow Mr. Robot, Zuckerberg's theory of like trying to just minimize decision-making on things that don't require a lot. But this sounds like you wear all of these shoes.
So I do now. Back when I first, so I've been collecting for 26 years, I think, about now. So when I first started collecting, I was still able to play ball at the time. And so there's only probably maybe, I'd say 2% of the shoes I actually wore. And then they'd go back in their boxes and clean them because I'm OCD that way. And now, but then when I said, hey, I shattered the foot, I'm not going to wear them again. I'm not going to buy anymore. when I started recollecting, I said, if I'm going to start collecting, I'm going to wear them. And that was part of the deal I made with myself, that I'm going to be throwing down this type of coin on shoes. I'm going to wear them. So now I actually do wear them. But before, I had 300 pairs of shoes, and I was wearing, I would say, I don't know, like I said, 1% of them. So now I do. But it does. You've got to say, all right, what goes with this? If it's summertime, they're different. What some are more summery shoes, like the Jordan,
Right.
like the low ones are a little bit more versus the mids or highs. So it's labor intensive. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into what shoes should I wear. And then when you're traveling, now there's this precedent that, what's Brooke, how many pairs of shoes are Brooke going to take to a conference, and what I can't wear the same shoe more than once. So it's a lot of work to put into myself to what shoes to bring.
I was at Costco and I found this $19 little suitcase that's slightly smaller than your average carry-on.
Okay.
And it is my mission when I go to a conference to see how I can get like 6 outfits into that one thing. Usually means I have the hard decision to make, which is, what shoes am I just going to wear through this entire thing? Because whatever's on my feet is like how this is going to go. So I can't even imagine all of the what shoes am I going to wear today? All this kind of stuff. There must be a spreadsheet. I'm only assuming there's got to be a spreadsheet.
There are lots of videos, and that's obviously for insurance purposes as well. Every time I get a new one, there's got to be video for insurance purposes. But prior to me starting to wear them again, I was traveling 3 weeks out of the month. And so I'd be gone for at least a week at a time, if not 10 days at a time. And I lived in Japan for a year, and I was gone for that time. So I had 2 suitcases for a year. So I used to be an incredible packer like you, where I could just have a little, carry-on suitcase, my little away suitcase. Not
Right.
that I'm plugging away, but I do love my away suitcase, where I would pack everything for a week. And then I met my now husband, where he is a massive overpacker, and it'd be like a week and he's got 2, full suitcases. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, now he's rubbed off on me, and it's like, okay, well, if we're going to overpack, I guess we're overpacking. So now I'll just take an entire carry on for my shoes. Let's go with it. Why not? So,
you know what I love about doing this show? I love that, when we first started years ago, it was like, get right into, hey, teach them something. I love that all these years later, what I've realized is we can talk about whatever the balls we want to talk about. And I love getting to know you. And I love that the audience is getting to know you, and that they're going to be on the lookout at any event where Brooke Furniss is attending. And they're going to be, the first thing is they're going to be looking at your feet.
Well, it's true. I make shoe contact before eye contact. So if when I walk up, they're walking, I'm not looking down.
Is that why you were frowning when you met me the first time? You looked down? You're like,
maybe.
Oh,
No, you actually, no, it's not just like, kicks. It's like, I'll recognize if like, oh, those are a nice pair of Italian shoes. Like I 100% I'm going to recognize, okay. Yeah. So I do recognize.
He doesn't care about himself.
He's let his shoe game go. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Hope he has a pretty spouse.
He needs to step that up a little bit.
Yeah, he needs to step that up. He needs to step his game. You mentioned living in Japan. I want to just touch on this a little bit because I think I want to try and connect some dots here. So obviously we know North America has a very distinct and what I would say emerging culture. I lived in the Philippines for a couple of years, and I know that things in Southeast Asia 6,000 years ago are pretty much the same as how they are, like culturally, belief systems, morals, things they care about professionally and at home, slight differences, slight similarities. But I mean, where we're in North America and we latch onto buzzwords, it's culture, it's whatever. What were your observations being in Japan? Do they tend to follow more of a Western sentiment as far as leadership is concerned, or professional culture is concerned, or is there a different mode of operation?
So a couple things with Japan. First off, speaking of buzzword bingo, culture, I've never been to a place that one is so safe and so clean. I was working with Broadway shows that was a Broadway show called Blast. And we would start it was very opposite normal hours. So I'd go to work at 4 p.m. and then would go to bed at like 3 a.m.
Right.
So I could go out running or work out at 3 o'clock in the morning and feel safer in some places in America, in America at noon. So super kind. And the people there, man, they are just so insanely kind. Very, very kind. Give the shirt off the back to anybody. So that was first and foremost. Secondly, we would go, now ramen is very big in America. But at the time, if I go back 10 years ago, you really couldn't find ramen here. So we would go, midnight, go to a ramen cart and be having ramen. And you would see 12 o'clock at night and every single building had lights on. So people, the work ethic there was almost to probably detrimental. People were working all hours of the night. At 1 o'clock in the morning, you'd see someone, businessmen coming down, getting their ramen and going right back up. I was like, and we were all just kind of sitting around like, oh, this is kind of crazy that people are working this long. Now, I'm not sure if that's still the case. That was in 2006, 2007, I was over there. So maybe it's changed, but that was one thing I definitely noticed, is that it was very, very hardworking. The second thing I noticed was that I was younger. I was 20, how old was I? 21, 20, I think I was 21 when I went over there. And you're younger, so you don't quite have the financial assistance to purchase certain things. Right. But one thing that was driven into me really pretty hardcore was, I was like, oh, so I can maybe get some Louis Vuitton knockoff, because everyone had like these old Louis Vuitton wallets. And I was like, oh, I can't necessarily afford that. So I was talking to a counterpart of mine, and she goes, oh, no, our culture, we don't do that. We buy, everything's got to be real. We don't do knockoffs. And I was like, oh, that's different in our culture. Everyone's like, oh, I want to go down to, Canal Street and buy the whatever. So there's just different things culture-wise when it comes to, it's got to be, very, very strict when it comes to certain things. And the work ethic, I was just kind of blown away that here that would never fly, to be working everyone in the office until midnight and don't stop. So those are some of the things that I noticed, at least.
I was just having a conversation with one of my team members, our director of demand gen, and she had just been at an event and she spoke and she crushed it. And we were kind of dissecting why, and lots of people shaking their hand and saying, hey, come, speaking invitations and all this. And I said, but you know why that is, right? She says, well, why? And I said, because you've put in the work. There's substance. Mm-hmm. Now, you made me think of that when you use the word knockoff. And I think this is really interesting when contrasted against what we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. North America does have knockoff culture. I got the knockoff, like Calvin Klein, our version of CK1, and it's like Target brands knockoff or whatever. We love knockoffs, and so much more prevalent in my mind, and I'd love your take on this, is when you go on social media, it's clear when you're a knockoff, when you haven't put in the work. So here we are professionally, especially as it pertains to the automotive industry. The buzz that we've latched onto is leadership, culture, et cetera. Everybody's got an opinion, but it is so very clear in my mind who has not put in the work.
Yeah, agreed.
So I'm curious your take. Why do you think that is? Where are things currently in our dealership landscape as far as needs of leadership? And what's your take on what we should be focusing on in this industry as far as leadership is concerned?
Well, I think when you break down, there is a stark difference in contrast, if you will, between leadership and management. And too often it gets confused that they're the same thing, and they're not. And so if you're looking in a dealership world, it's, oh, little Billy or little Susie over here is selling 100 cars. So that must mean that he or she needs to be promoted to manager. No, that's not how it works, because most likely little Billy or little Susie has been trained to say, you be a killer, you win at all costs.
Right. Does
that make a good leader or a good manager? Not necessarily, because that means that they've most likely focused on me, which doesn't make a good leader or manager. Then there's a difference. Someone can be a great leader. Does that make a good manager? Because they can actually manage people, because they go hand in hand, but they're not the same thing. So if you take that outside, you have your own company, for instance. Sometimes you find that people will say, well, not say, they just, they get to the top, or they think they're at the top and they're like pounding their chest. Well, what happens then? someone's going to come up and knock you off the mountain. So you have to constantly be learning, constantly saying, how can I better myself? I had a great conversation with Jerry Kilway last week, and he had a great saying. So I'm going to steal this from him. It's not mine. Give him all credit for it. He's like, what happens to a pool when it becomes stagnant? It gets, stagnant water just sits there and it gets all moldy and nasty. And It's so true. If we just become stagnant, what we do, that's no one's going to want to be around us. We get all nasty and mildewy and it's nasty. And someone's going to probably make me into a meme and let me look looking like that now. But it's so true.
I'm going to turn you into the meme. No,
you haven't made it until you become a meme. So there you go. But it's so true is that you've got to keep learning. You've got to keep growing, keep asking questions, keep raising your hand and saying, how can I improve myself? And I think when you look inwardly and say, how can we do that? And then getting to the problem is removing that ego. And I think that too often is that it's, well, that can't happen to me, or it's got to be you. I had a situation where I had this is actually back in before I had my business, that was a employee that I just couldn't seem to figure out why I couldn't connect this employee. And I had tried everything under the sun. And I was asking other people, I was researching, asking everybody outside the dealership. And I finally just said, you know what? There's got to be something maybe happening at home that's causing this issue. So I finally just, let's get this person out of the dealership and just take this person for lunch. And maybe then this person will open up. And that's what it took to finally get the person out of the dealership to open up, to figure out, oh, there's a whole situation going on at home that is causing the person not to be able to retain anything. And it was so frustrating because I was like, what am I missing here? But it was something that happened at home. Or whether it's, removing that ego to say, hey, maybe the people just don't want to hear my voice anymore. So bringing in someone else to teach them. But removing that ego is so big. And knowing as a leader or manager that sometimes it is you and it's not them. And so I think that all those things go into what a leader and a manager really should be, and in order to grow and to prosper, and all the other buzzwords you want to throw in there to move it forward.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Leadership requires so many more soft skills than hard skills, doesn't it? I think that's something you make me really think of when you draw the distinction between leadership and management. Often in this industry, as you pointed out, we get promoted or we rise the ranks, so to speak, predicated on hard skills. I was able to sell X. I was able to do this much. I was able to whatever. I had an interesting conversation with David Spizak, and we were talking about my company and getting to the next phase of growth. And the one thing that really stood out to me that he talked about is knowing what I'm not good at so that I can give it to somebody who is good at that thing. And that requires, to your point, removing ego. Well, it's my business. I started. I should be good at all the things. I mean, this is where we came from. And I think often that's how managers look at it. They go, well, no, nobody can be better at the thing than I am. That's why I'm the manager. And I just find like that is a weird sword to fall on. But it's also a sword you created for yourself because you didn't give yourself anything else, right? What's your take?
100% agree. Two, like you just said, is that one of the best things you can do as a manager, as an owner, or even as a salesperson, it doesn't matter what type of employee you are, surround yourself with people a hell of a lot smarter than you. I cannot stress that enough. And yet some people, to your point, will just say, nope, I can't hire anybody that's smart. They've got to be this level and below. Why would you do that? That makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Because when I hire someone that's smarter than me, man, that makes me look so much smarter than I really am. That's right. Exactly what I want. I want someone that's going to bring me up, because when that person succeeds, I succeed. And when this person over here succeeds, man, we all succeed. So it's just opening their eyes a little bit. But when someone says, I'm only going to hire X and below, all that does is scream to their insecurities. So if you can reach down to that person and say, okay, let's talk about this. If they're open to that and figure out, okay, why is it you're doing this? And, talk to them a little bit about that. If they're not open to that, that's a whole, there's nothing you can do about that. But if you can and say, hey, here's what happens when we do this, man, all of us succeed. At the end of the day, it's going to help your paycheck. It's going to help your bottom line. It's going to help your gross profit. It's going to help all of us.
Yeah, makes total sense. This is really kind of a good, overview of where things have been in the last, Lord knows how many years, right? Let's just call it the last 20 years. Moving into the next 20 years, though, we're faced with so many different types of challenges. And that's why I wanted to kind of start with Japan and get an understanding of how things function in other parts of the world, because there's similarities, but there's also differences. And I think it's important, especially as we put this content out for a global audience, that we do our best to try and understand, am I living in a vacuum? Right? Especially in the Americas, we tend to think that if it's happening here and we think a certain way, that's the way everyone everywhere else in the world thinks and acts and functions. Totally not the case. But drawing on the similarities as it pertains to leadership, where should I be focused over the next 18 months, 5 years, 20 years? Where are things headed? What should leaders ultimately be working on, focusing on, and deploying in their organizations?
I think you always focus in-house. That's first and foremost, is you focus on your people, because if your people, you focus in-house, and that's always going to go outwardly. At the end of the day, I don't want to use buzzwords here, so just working internally. If your people are happy, and it starts at top, if you're happy and you invest in your people, that is going to show forth on into everything else. So if I know, as I focus down on my employees and say, hey, I'm investing in you because I invest in the best. And it's just not words. I got to make that very, very clear, because you can talk all this blah, 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 yada, 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 but it's actually doing it. And there's obviously a lot of things you can do with that. But when you do that, then they know, hey, I'm going to run through a wall for her because she's going to do the same thing for us. And she's actually proven that with what she does and her actions. Then when they interact with the customers and the clients, that's going to show. And the clients will be like, wow, holy crap. They love their job and they love what they do. And that's going to go forward. And then the clients are going to be like, hey, you're going to want to work with them because they're phenomenal. And that's just it's going to continue to continue to go and go and go and go. So when you start at the base level and the foundation, that's the most important thing. All the other stuff is icing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and could be used as a Band-Aid if placed out of sequence, right? Like, I love how you say foundation. What's the first thing we do when we build a house? We lay a solid foundation, right? And so I love the visual of us, as you point out, of building on your foundation. But also, to your point, I know there's a lot of people that say, well, but what does that look like? And I love that you say it's not just words. Words are cheap. It can't be talk. So what kinds of things have you observed as you work with your clients across your, client portfolio and throughout the industry as you travel and go to events? What are some common leadership attributes or traits that you've picked up on that the most successful organizations utilize versus those that seem to perpetually struggle?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes down to, I'll say dealership land, is when you look at the employees, I'll say from like the benefit, people will throw around, oh, we'd have great benefits. What are your benefits? That's what I'd like to know. What are your benefits? Oh, we do 401k and we do health benefits. Once again, what are your benefits? Because I've been in the dealership world and I've been outside the dealership world. And 9 times out of 10, your benefits cannot compete with outside the dealership land. So lay that out. Are your health benefits actually that good? Do you actually cover it? Because you're most likely not. They're usually not as good. So lay it out. Do they have to work on Saturdays? Do they get Saturdays off? Do they come in and be like, you know what, you've got to work bell to bell every single day? Why would I want to come into that? Like, that should not. Do you get trained? Or it's just, hey, we're going to throw in the deep end and good luck. Hope you figure it out. Because the best out there are actually training. Do you say, you know what? Great example. I was talking to David Long yesterday and I sent him a text and had Stephanie on it. And he goes, oh, actually, Stephanie's on vacation. Immediately took Stephanie off the text chain. Like, what other GM and manager is doing? Like, hey, you know what? She's on vacation. So I pride myself to say, hey, if someone's on vacation, delete your freaking email app. I don't want to hear from you. I'm not going to bug you. If someone's on a text chain, I'm going to delete you. Like how many dealerships are doing that right now? How many businesses, not even dealership, how many businesses are doing that? I was talking to another colleague that it is mandated. Well, I won't say it's mandated, but it's highly encouraged that when they go on vacation, that if a dealership calls them, they answer. What?
Right.
What? They can't ever unplug. That is the whole point. You should want to encourage your employees that when they go, when they're off, that they're off. So when they come back, they're recharged. They want to make more money. They want to come work for you. That's the whole point. So making sure that they're fully trained, that they don't jump in and not know what the hell they're doing, that they're not frustrated. It's like, I never even had the tools to train me, whether it's the training, whether it's the actual equipment, whether it's, the right managers, having the communication. There's so many parts that go into actually being able to do that first step before you ever get to the first step of selling or getting behind the wheel, or if you're in fixed ops, there's so many things that go in before you actually take that first step. Are those things in place? And then from there, are communication barriers open? Is HR accessible? And then from there, like I said, the actual hardcore benefits, don't just say that you have benefits, list them. If it's possible, make sure that they're good. Otherwise, you're gonna lose them to Uber and Lyft and everything in between.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And all of that makes me think of one word, and it is for leaders in particular. And that word is it's mindfulness. Being mindful of the needs of each of your team members. And, like your example of David, some people might be like, well, no, she needs to be in the know. She's a part of he's being mindful of the fact that she's recharging.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, being mindful. I heard, one of my team members was sharing the fact that she could tell when leaders had integrity because they were concerned about the lowest paid person on their team. And she shared an experience of she was just at this event in Toronto, and she says, I can tell the leader of that company has integrity because the entire time we were at dinner, he was concerned about a brand new team member who he knew had celiac disease or disorder or whatever it's called, and was just so concerned the whole meal that they were getting taken care of appropriately. So mindfulness, and to your point, benefits. To me, the benefits show how mindful an organization is on the people that matter most. And sometimes it's easy for us to get the wires crossed and be like, well, customers matter most. Without them, there's no revenue. No. No. They're supposed to matter most to your people. Your people are supposed to matter most to you as the leader. And what can you do to help, to your point, enrich and empower them and lift them and edify them so that they can go and do the work that they were hired to do, which is to take care of the customers. And so I really, really love your mind on this. Where do you see things going in the next 10 years? What do leaders need to be focused on? I mean, yes, people, yes, mindfulness. Is there anything else that you could add that we should be focused on?
I think the industry right now is in an interesting time for a lot of different reasons. And there's some unknowns. There's some scary things that are coming down the pike or maybe coming down the pike. So I think as leaders, don't lose your spine and don't lose your voice. I would just caution that so much right now with a lot of things coming down the pike that can directly impact not just the dealers, not just the owners. It also directly impacts the front and the back end significantly. So I just caution that we do not lose sight of the end goal and to not lose sight that right now we might be doing very well, and as most people are, and to not lose sight of the long goal and to not lose our voice, not lose our spine, and to stand up when things don't lose your spine and don't lose your voice.
I love it. Brooke, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. How can those listening get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm usually about everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, We do the podcast goes live Mondays and Fridays. Fridays, we are now switching to 12 p.m. Central.
Ooh, look at me. I do 2 days a week.
But we're not as cool as you. We don't have the cool background.
Yeah, well. Hey, and if nobody listens, who cares?
Right?
What the
Seriously.
background looks like.
Yeah, that's also true. That's true. We're still getting that point. So yeah, so we're really about anywhere. You can follow me, my personal account or the DZ account. So it doesn't either are good. So we really, honestly, anywhere you'll find me.
Amazing. Highly recommend you guys go check out Brooke's profile on LinkedIn. That's where I've seen you posting a lot, and definitely check out her podcast. We'll link to it in the show notes. Brooke, thanks again for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.